Hello, you are tuned into AWANI Review with me, Cynthia Ng. Today we will be taking a closer look at Malaysia's journey towards sustainable energy. Now, sustainability is more than swapping out fossil fuels for renewables. It is also about harnessing the power of technologies like AI, data analytics, industrial intelligence, for example, to make our energy systems work better together. And this is critical in our effort to decarbonize the power sector. So I'm really excited today because joining me is a company that's at the forefront of doing this. AVEVA is a global leader in industrial software, and with me right now we have Mr. Shashank Luthra, Vice President for AVEVA at Southeast Asia. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you for having us at your office today.
My pleasure, and thank you for joining us here.
Well, Shashank, first of all, I think before we dive into what AVEVA is doing in shaping Malaysia's energy sector, could you give us a glimpse of what AVEVA is for our audience, especially who may not be familiar with AVEVA?
No, and as you said, right, global leader in industrial software, but that's not going to mean much to most people, right? If I expand it, I would actually say we are the global leader in an industrial data and applications, right? To break that down, industrial refers to the people we serve, the customers we serve. We have over 20,000 customers around the world. We serve 90% of the enterprises that bring us power, energy, food, water. So they're the real industrial players, right? And what we do for them is the portfolio that's based on a 50-year heritage, right? We have 120 products. The easy way to understand it is there's three buckets. There's design, there's operate, and there's optimize. So in the industrial space, if you want to design a new plant, you're probably going to use our software. If you're going to operate that plant, the operator, the one running the process, is probably using our software. And then collecting all of that data, which is where a lot of the magic starts, and optimizing and running applications on top of that data, that's the third bucket of our portfolio. What makes this even more powerful, and which is why I use the word platform, is bringing all of this together into one platform where you can bring all the data up with context, but also share it, visualize it, build applications on it. So that's where the real power is. That's why we like to call, we call that platform the Connect platform. That's why we would say we are an industrial data and applications platform company.
All right, well, thank you for that introduction. And just to draw from your point, our topic today is about energy and sustainability. So those three key areas that you have mentioned, there are so much opportunities to optimize, to make the usage of energy more efficient, regardless of sectors, right? So could you then tell us a bit more about the work that AVEVA is doing in Malaysia in shaping the energy sector?
So before I answer how we are helping Malaysia's transition towards energy sustainability, I'd like to point out that it's core to our mission. So our mission is to spark industrial ingenuity by linking people with information and insights to drive responsible use of the world's resources. So as Malaysia transitions to a stated target of 40% of energy capacity from renewable energies by 2035, and I think it's about 18% right now, that's a very ambitious target. We hope to help on both sides. And what I mean by both sides is I like to think of myself as a very pragmatic sustainability advocate. This is not going to come from one silver bullet, right? When we talk about design, operate, optimize, that's all on, I would say, on the supply side. You're designing a new hydrogen plant. You are putting up a digital twin to manage a solar plant. Solar is going to be key to Malaysia's transition, right? That's all on the supply side. I think we will help. We are helping, and we will help a lot on that. The other thing on the demand side, right? The greenest unit of energy is the one you don't consume. And when I talked about our industrial customers, they are heavy consumers of energy. So everything we do to reduce their consumption of energy also contributes to this transition.
Okay. Now, you pointed out being pragmatic. I think just in my introduction, I said that going sustainable is not just about replacing fossil fuels with renewables. It is also about optimizing. And I think we are already facing a challenge as it is of trying to get more renewables into the system. But at the same time, there is rising demand for electricity. So that is the main challenge that we're facing as we move ahead to the future. So I do want to get a sense of how do you think this added pressure, rising demand, but also trying to meet targets like climate targets, how is this going to impact our journey towards a more greener future?
It's not going to be easy, right? For sure. I think the demand, and you and I were talking about AI earlier, right, before we started our conversation. That's driving a lot of demand for data centers. A large part of them are in this part of the world, which is great for our economy, right? And that is going to drive demand up. That is also going to drive demand in an unpredictable fashion, right? The only solution one of the solutions that I see is better visibility and planning for that demand, right? And that's where a data management platform or having that visibility ahead, learning from past data, right, from algorithms makes sense, and then accelerating the supply, right? And then linking it together so that you're getting the supply through smart grid management to where the demand is needed. So I think we need to tackle both sides simultaneously to address this problem.
It's interesting you brought up data centers, because when we talk about technologies, AI has that potential to boost the transition to more efficient energy, but at the same time, it's also driving demand for electricity, right? And using up massive amount of energy. So let's talk about data then, because you mentioned this a few times now. Can you help us visualize how does having more visibility into data and having more access to data help companies to make better choices to help move towards a more efficient energy planning? Because data's plenty, correct? But how do you use it?
Yeah. And unfortunately, most of that data is under lock and key or is in silos, right? Data wants to be free. Data needs to be liberated. The challenge with all of these data silos in any company is that data is sitting with various departments. Bringing it together is a challenge. And then if you bring it together, you realize that there is no single source of truth left anymore, right? And you're spending a lot of time reconciling what data to believe in. So one of the things we strongly believe in is creating an agnostic, open platform where you can bring data to the fore, right? And that has two types of benefits, right? One is creating visibility within the company, right? And let me give you two examples. One is actually Petronas, our landlords, the building that we are sitting in. They've done a really amazing job. They have 650 plus sources of data from 12 data systems coming together, 5 billion data points a day, being sourced and set up at various personas so that they can take decisions, real-time decisions on the right data. Another player, Air Selangor, a lot of water, right, that is provided in Malaysia. For their entire operational footprint, they have one integrated command center that's running on our software. So that's bringing the real-time visibility for operations in one place. And once you have the visibility for operations, then you can take the next step saying, okay, here's my energy consumption. And as energy supply changes price, maybe I can move my energy demand around to take advantage of that, right? So that's overall at a system level, that's great. The other thing, which we haven't talked about, is the real power in going towards sustainability will come from industrial ecosystems, right? We talked about sharing data within the company. We believe power will be sharing data outside the company as well, but in a secure way, right? So if I want to open up data visibility for an application or for a manufacturer who's making something for me, I can open it for a couple of weeks, I can close it, I can only give access to certain data, not all data. And once you're able to do that, you create visibility, right? So for example, in the US, there's an energy consulting company called Z Global, which has created a Silicon Valley Energy Alliance. And they collect data from all of the players in the ecosystem and share it across the ecosystem to take better system-wide decisions. So that's the power of data being leveraged across the ecosystem to drive that kind of better use of energy.
No, that's very interesting. But I do also want to point out that, of course, when we talk about, for instance, power generation, energy is a matter of national security.
Yep.
And there are instances of rising cases of hacking and all that, breaches of data. How do you see us ramping up usage, trying to be more efficient, but at the same time facing all this kind of challenges?
Yeah. Cybersecurity, right? Cybersecurity is core to ensuring that those challenges is that you're doing that in a way which protects national security or which protects the confidence in national security, right? So we do three things, and so we work with over 1,000 energy players around the world, right? Okay. We work with the biggest ones. We work with all of the top 20 power utility companies in the US. We work here with Tenaga and Sarawak Energy. right? So we're very familiar and with the challenges and pressures that these players face, right? From a cybersecurity point of view, we do three things, right? Number one is as we develop the software, we are ensuring that we are following the most strict cybersecurity compliance guidelines. The second thing, which is very important, is to ensure that as we transition our customers to more of a subscription-based system, is that they have the latest software. So as you are probably aware, one of the biggest risks is software that has not been patched or has not been upgraded, right? So we automate that as far as possible. The third thing is that operations center that I was talking about, that real-time visibility, we are helping bridge the gap between IT and OT. So IT being the information technology side, which is actually proceeded very fast along this path, and OT, the operational technology side, which is a little bit lagging. Us bringing that together in one place increases the visibility at a company level to that, right? So if you put these three together, we are confident that we can help address the cybersecurity concerns. As an aside, our own global cybersecurity team, the one that protects us, is based here in our KL offices, actually. So there's another reason why Malaysia is so important to us.
All right, good to know. So I do want to focus on Malaysia for a moment because Malaysia has an ambitious target of reaching 70% renewable energy. I think it will be in 2030 or something?
2035.
2035, okay. So where then do you see the challenges for power companies? Because you mentioned a few players, key players, but then we are still quite far away from reaching that figure. And where do you think there are the existing gaps that you see there's a potential to be optimized and to make it more efficient with data and the power of analytics?
Yeah. So I would say a few things, right? One is solar is going to be very, very important for Malaysia, right? The average wind speed in Malaysia is just not enough to have onshore wind as a big source, right? So if you think about solar, if you think about hydro, those are going to be the big ones. I think we've talked a lot about how you will actually start putting that supply into place, right? I think a big challenge is cost. What is going to pay for all of that? How are you going to map that transition, right? So if I think about the cost, how we think we can help, right? For example, on the renewable space, right? When you're setting up new hydrogen plants, there's obviously one hydrogen plant already in Malaysia. I expect many more to come up. Our process simulation software allows that to be designed in a more we have a template, right, which allows you to design it faster in a less risky way. So you get off the ground faster. It's cheaper to get going. We work with lithium producers around the world to ensure that you're getting lithium at the lowest cost, right? We work with players like Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, which provides a lot of the power generation here, right? Helping them optimize the cost of how they are servicing their customers and reducing the cost for the operator here, right? So a lot going on the cost front. The other thing, which I think is the big challenge, is talent, is workforce, right? You have a lot of people who are experienced, who are retiring. Younger people don't always want to work in the locations where a lot of these companies are, right? And how do we use technology, how do we use AI to bridge that gap is going to be the other big avenue, I think, or other big challenge that we have to bridge. So there's cost and there's talent. Right.
So picking up on your point about talent, if you can talk to us about the scenario in Malaysia as we move towards more advanced technologies in the power sector, give us an assessment on the availability and readiness of the workforce in the sector. No, I think what is very heartening is the Energy Commission in Malaysia has already identified this as a need, right? So they've identified that we need 60,000 people in this area. They're already working to train them, to enable them. Personally, and this is actually the part about AI that excites me more than anything else, is the opportunity to use AI to bridge the, what's known as tribal knowledge. The knowledge that's sitting inside the heads of people may not always be on a document or on written down somewhere. So if you are able to capture that knowledge, which is inherent to the company, we believe that AI can surface that at the right time to a newer employee. Right? To give you an example, you're running a wind farm, right? Or you're running a hydropower plant. You are sitting in the command center, you see an error. Now, knowing what that error would be, a more experienced employee would automatically know this is what I need to go look at. However, what you can do is you can query a virtual assistant and say, what is the potential source of this error? And it could say,
this particular turbine stopped turning last night at this time because the temperature went up. It could be a maintenance issue. By the way, here is the maintenance manual for that. By the way, you probably need to trigger a work order. Here is the work order. I've already pre-populated it with that information, right? So suddenly you are reducing the chances that a new employee will make an error, and you are increasing their productivity, and you're capturing all of that value that's already in your organization and surfacing it through AI.
Would you be able to share, in your opinion, what are some of the skill sets that's much needed in the power sector as we move forward towards using more AI and data in the sector?
Yeah. I would say, other than engineering, core engineering knowledge, right? I would say the ability to understand what the data is saying, the ability to say, okay, this is what to visualize the implications of that data, number one, is very critical. Two, to be frank, and this is emerging, is how do you ask the question of the AI in the right way, right?
It's just how we use ChatGPT, for instance.
Exactly, right? And having enough of a learning mindset that you are testing different ways of asking the question, and the ability to apply a critical lens to the answer. And bringing your engineering knowledge and your ability to understand data, say, that looks wrong. Let me not follow that response blindly. Let me ask the question another way to see if I get a different answer, right? That worries me the most in our industry, which is if you, and which is why we've been a little cautious in the rollout of AI in our interaction, right? AI has been embedded in our algorithms, but in the interaction part of our software, if there's a mistake or an error, the consequences could be catastrophic, right? So having the talent to be able to put that critical lens, I think, is critical.
Okay. I wanted to touch on another point, because you talk about cost savings for the clients and the industry players that you work with. But as we talk about sustainable energy, having more renewable sources in the system and all that, what does this really mean for regular folks and households? I guess my question is, will we see higher energy costs with more renewables? But at the same time, you say that AI and all that could help make things more efficient. So I just want to get a sense, where are we? What does it mean to the folks watching this?
Yeah. If I could answer that, I would probably have a different job. I would be picking stocks. No, I'm joking, right? I think there are a few. The biggest benefit I think all of this technology is going to make for the individual is that the ability to optimize your expenses on energy based on all the data, right? What I mean by that is there's two parts to it. One is, when should I consume more, right? Energy is cheaper during certain hours of the day. Can I buy a battery storage system for my house and charge that up when the energy is cheaper and then run it when I need the energy, right? Because instead of consuming at the same time as everyone else, maybe I can offset my consumption. The other thing which is interesting, which I know, for example, Tenaga has published guidelines on it, is people will start putting up their own energy sources. You buy a set of solar panels for your roof, right? Can you use that then to generate electricity, put it back into the grid, which, by the way, grids are not really ready for two-way flows yet. But if you were able to put it back on the grid and you offset the cost of your own consumption by selling electricity back to the grid, right? I don't know when these changes will happen, but the ability to drive these two changes, I think, I don't know if it will reduce costs, but it should definitely reduce the rate of increase of costs for the individual.
So you mentioned grid, which is something I wanted to bring up earlier when you mentioned about infrastructure and how you work with these big major players. But the problem with Malaysia, I think many countries as well, is the infrastructures are old sometimes. How do you see scaling technologies to meet ambitious targets like going to be net zero, and all that? And how do you see that happening and creating a balance so that it doesn't overwhelm the grid as well?
So I think a few things. One is, you're absolutely right. This is not a Malaysia-specific problem, right? The power sector as a whole globally has this challenge. So I would say a few things. One is, the cost dimension we talked about earlier is about freeing up cost to make the investments. Right? So, but I'm not going to repeat that part of the conversation. So but that's critical, right? The other thing is actually using technology to identify efficiency gaps that are there even today, right? Sometimes, and we did work with a player in Australia, right? Existing grid, old grid, they didn't know how much, we talked about the two-way, right? They didn't know where they could actually put more load on the grid versus less. So putting tracking data on each of those lines and figuring out what the dynamic usage of that grid was, they were actually able to unlock almost 20% capacity, right? So I would say just because the grid is old here doesn't mean there is not opportunity. There is opportunity. It's a question of using the information you have, bringing it in one place, analyzing it in a smart way to uncover that opportunity.
Right. Now, just the final few minutes that we have left. So just coming back to Malaysia, because we want to look at how we can speed up the energy transition towards more clean energy in Malaysia. So what are some of the lessons do you think Malaysia can take away from other countries which have done well? For instance, you mentioned Australia. Yeah. How do you think Malaysia can learn from other sectors when it comes to moving towards cleaner and more sustainable energy?
I would say a few things, right? One is, we talked about one example from Australia already. The other thing, by the way, something which, and I can share this is public, a public case study. So Tenaga already is using our technology to optimize their spend on transformers. So historically they have a wide fleet of transformers, as you can imagine. A lot of the data was manual. Had to be analyzed manually, and therefore maintenance tended to be reactive, right? They've actually moved all of that data into one central repository. They are able to do rate of change analysis, which means you can predict when you're going to have a failure. And because of that, not only is your uptime more, but your cost of maintenance is going down, right? So these kind of technologies are already being deployed. You and I may not see them in the front, right, of where we engage with them, but the people are doing that, right? The other thing which we are very honored, right, to help with, for example, we did host a delegation from Malaysia at our offices in California, where the Energy Commission, Tenaga, Sarawak Energy, they had all come and visited our offices. They were doing a tour. And we were able to share with them what's happening on smart grid, what's happening elsewhere. So one is, Malaysia can also learn by the way it is already doing by sending players outside, right? The third thing I would say is, also, there are less established or more startup type companies worth learning from. For example, we work with a company called 9REN, which does turnkey power plant deployments, but they do it across Europe. So giving them a central operation center where they're able to track and manage that, and then using that to optimize the way they operate, I can see Malaysian companies doing the same, because you have a lot of independent power producers here as well. How can you learn from those kind of examples, right? So I think there's lots happening, keeping eyes and ears open, relying not just on us, but other companies like us to bring best practices from elsewhere, and also sharing best practices that are already happening internally is, I think, how Malaysia can do better.
All right. One final question to you, Shashank. And someone who is in the industrial software industry, I do wonder what emerging technologies are you most looking forward to, or what's keeping you excited about this sector? Ooh,
that's a very interesting question. I think to me, what is most exciting is actually the power of what you can unlock. I mean, we've sort of talked about this, right? I get really excited about generating more impact with the investments we have already made. Right? We as an industry, as multiple industries, have a lot of, especially industries that are considered more old world, right? The fact of the matter is there's a lot of data, information, insight, which is buried in these companies. And if we can uncover that and we can put that forward in front of the next generations, right? To me, that's actually the most exciting, because you can unlock a lot of value based on existing investments.
We are not lack of data, it's just how you interpret and bring it.
I could not have summarized it better.
Make sense out of it. All right, well, thank you so much, Shashank, for sharing your insights. Truly appreciate your time for speaking with me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.